This is when the neighbor says he has footage of Chris in the morning loading the truck. And there's some really scary things that happen here. First of all, Chris is watching that footage with the neighbor and with the police. And Chris said later on in that moment, he thought he was about to get caught. Welcome to True Crime Confessionals Deep Dive Story Times. We're going to cover everything on this channel. My name is Esther, and if you've never seen me before, I'm a TikToker, an actress, and I love making videos. For the first episode of this true crime series, I'm going to be talking about the Chris Watts case. Shanann and Chris met in 2010, and where? Of all places, Facebook. He sent her a friend request and she accepted. So what's interesting about this case is that there is a documentary about it on Netflix. It's called American Murder: The Family Next Door. And in this documentary, they show a lot of the footage that Shanann filmed, and she was an avid Facebook user. She was a quintessential, I would say, influencer. She posted about what meals she was making and family videos and videos about Chris, herself talking about the family. So she was extremely active on Facebook. So she said that when they met, she wasn't looking for a boyfriend. She wasn't looking for anything serious. She didn't want a relationship. And all of a sudden she gets this Facebook request and it's Chris. She thinks, what the heck? I have a million other Facebook friends. I'll just accept. She said, quote, "When I met Chris, I pushed him away. I gave him an out. I tortured him. I rejected him, but he stuck around because he was the one for me." That is scary, you guys, thinking that you're married to somebody who would never hurt you, who would keep you safe and your children at all costs. Shanann was convinced that this man was the best thing that ever happened to her, and she did say that. They get married in Charlotte, North Carolina on November 3rd, 2012, which is now 12 years ago. Crazy. Her father, Frank, in the wedding gave a little speech and he said, quote, "I couldn't ask for a better man for her. He makes her smile and she makes him smile. God bless you both." This is all while her mother is standing next to Shanann's father, who was giving that speech, and her mom is crying. And then her brother is next to the mom and he's crying. And they're talking about how much they love Chris and how happy he makes Shanann and how happy she makes him. And fast forward a few years to what happened. I just put myself in that position. Imagine yourself getting married and your parents are giving beautiful speeches, and your brother who you're so close to, who you love so much. Bella, their first daughter, was born December 17th, 2013. And their second daughter, Celeste, was born in July of 2015. You know what's scary about this is how happy they looked in their home videos. In all the videos that Shanann posted of Chris with the girls, you can see how much Celeste and Bella loved Chris and how much he loved them, the way he played with them. You could see that he was a really good dad from the outside. Looking in, you'd never think from looking at those videos that Shanann posted, which you can see on the documentary, and if you do some of your own research, you can find them on YouTube. You would never know that Chris would end up doing what he did because he looked like such a loving father. In June of 2015, they filed for bankruptcy, which is terrible. That's a devastating thing for any family to have to do. Together, Shanann and Chris had an income of $90,000 per year. And it looks like they were living outside of their means. It seems like Shanann wanted to get a bigger house, so they did. They had an insane amount of credit card debt, medical bills, student loans. You can see how that would put an insane amount of pressure on somebody. Pay for a new house and pay for a new car, which Shanann had a new car, they had a new house. So I found out their mortgage was $3,000 plus a $600 car payment, which took up most of their monthly income, which was $4,900. That's how much they were earning together. And they were paying around $36,000, probably even more, because if you're counting in groceries and things, it'd be a lot more than just the $3,600. So they ended up getting sued by the homeowners association of where they live because they had unpaid fees. This would not be easy for any family to deal with that amount of stress. At some point, Shanann joins an MLM. I don't know how much money she was making, but from the outside, what she was posting her big house and her new car, and this made people think that she was probably doing well with the job. So I'm not sure how they were in so much debt, if she was presenting, which I guess is the thing, is that she was presenting something that wasn't truly the case. On June 17th of 2018, Shanann tells Chris that she's pregnant. This whole interaction is recorded on her cell phone. In that very same month that she told him she was pregnant, Chris started talking to Nichol Kessinger. Now, how did they know each other? She worked at Anadarko, where Chris worked as well. Now, I'm going to give you guys a whole list, a rundown of all of the lies Nichol told that she tells about the inception of her relationship with Chris, because clearly this woman was either stalking Chris and Shanann because she knew of them up to a year before she met Chris at Anadarko. And what is believed is that her dad worked at Anadarko and she had met Chris at some point during her dad's time at Anadarko. Maybe they met at a holiday party or a work function, work event, and she must have gotten a really big crush on Chris at the time because she started Facebooking, like searching his name on Facebook almost a year, 8 months before she met him. But this is the thing, she also searched Shanann on Facebook as well. What people think is she either had something against Shanann, maybe she met Shanann through the MLM, and maybe Shanann did something that Nichol didn't like. And then Nichol started looking at Shanann's life on Facebook, and it seemed like the perfect life. She had the perfect husband, the perfect house, the perfect, beautiful children, which they were perfect, the perfect car, the perfect job. She just had everything, and Nichol would have wanted that. So according to them, they met later in that month. So technically, Chris wasn't having an affair with Nichol just yet. So when he found out about the pregnancy, he hadn't been with Nichol yet. In the next month, in July, they start a schmexual relationship. A married man and Nichol Kessinger. And guess what? Nichol knows that he is married. Okay? She's not some innocent bystander in all this. Let me tell you that right now. In that same month, Chris tells Nichol that his divorce to Shanann has been finalized. Liar. And this is all while Shanann was out of town in North Carolina with the girls. So Chris was alone for about 5 weeks. Of course, what else does he do? He starts an affair. That's what he does while his wife and his daughters are away visiting her parents and his parents as well. He starts an affair. What a great dad. While they're away, this is the first time that Nichol goes to their house on July 4th. She says they went on a date to a car museum because she just happened to have all the same interests that he did, of course. And they also spent the night at the Dunes National Park on July 28th. God, they're so adventurous and cool together. And then 2 days after that, he goes and joins his family on this trip. But before he leaves, he gives Nichol a love letter. While his pregnant wife and his daughters are waiting for him, he's writing love notes to his mistress and giving it to her before he leaves. Okay, I find this next fact absolutely creepy. I think Nichol is a dangerous freaking creep. On August 4th, a couple of days later, she starts Googling, get this, wedding dresses. That's the logical thing to Google when you've been seeing a man for a couple of weeks and he's got a wife and children. Yes, it's perfectly normal to start Googling wedding dresses. And she was Googling this for 2 hours. Picture yourself shopping for one particular thing for 2 hours. I mean, many of you probably have. I have, I'm sure. But for 2 hours to be completely consumed with the thought of finding a wedding dress to marry the man who's already married to somebody else, who has children, with a pregnant wife, with a baby on the way, a baby, his name is Nico. I think it's important to understand just how quickly the relationship between Chris and Nichol developed, because they quickly became obsessive over each other, which I do not think that is normal. I think, it's nice to have an infatuation at the beginning of a relationship and hopefully, throughout the relationship. But the way they were talking and communicating all the time, it seems like they were teenagers. That first kind of obsessive kind of puppy love, that's what their relationship was giving. Now, something I find so interesting about their relationship is that when it actually began over email. And Chris was the one that initiated. He emailed her saying how pretty she was. And Nichol replied saying that she believed in karma. So she thought that it was best to keep their friendship just that, at work. But then the conversation continued, and they continued emailing each other, eventually getting each other's numbers, eventually talking, eventually meeting up. And quickly after meeting up, they started their physical relationships. And I wonder what happened to her if she said, you know, this isn't a good idea. I mean, you're married. I believe in karma. For the sake of your wife, your family, and myself, which she did say in her emails, we should just keep this as friends. So what happened, girl? What happened in between sending that email and you guys doing it? So from what I gather in articles as I was reading, their physical relationship was very intense. They were doing it between 3 to 4 times a day. God. Yeah, that's a lot. In the documentary, they show messages on the screen while the documentary plays. And Nichol had been messaging her friend about Chris. She had her friend looped in on the whole relationship. And part of what she said was that their chemistry was really intense and that they were extremely attracted to each other and that they could not resist each other. And that it was the best she'd ever had. Up until that point, she had never been with anybody else who could make her feel the things that Chris made her feel. So when you put yourself in their shoes and you start to think about that, maybe you would become obsessed with somebody and not care that he's married and has kids and a baby on the way. I mean, I wouldn't. Something else that really disturbs me is that while Chris and Nichol were having this intense physical relationship, Shanann was sending Chris marriage counseling resources and how they can better their relationship through text message while she was away for those 5 weeks. This woman is over here thinking that they're going to work things out, and it's her husband. Of course they're going to work things out. They have children together. He loves her. All the while, he is with someone else. My mother-in-law just came and asked me if I want Greek salad. She's so sweet. The way Chris was able to hide this relationship so well was that he had an app on his phone that was disguised as a calculator, and when you put in a code, it would reveal messages and photos that him and Nichol had been sending each other. They were in an app that was disguised as something completely different, so he was smart about it. I'll give him that, He hid the relationship really well, but he couldn't hide the way he was acting with Shanann. Shanann knew that something was up. I mean, when you stop kissing and touching your wife is going to think something is wrong, which is exactly what happened. Another way he got really good at hiding the relationship was that whenever him and Nichol went out to dinners, obviously he would be the one to pay. He would use gift cards to pay for those dinners. He would never use his credit card, which was linked to his shared bank account with Shanann. And this is when we get the infamous Lazy Dog restaurant incident. A few days before the murder, Shanann had gone on a business trip with one of her friends, and this was for her MLM business. Of course, Chris took advantage while the girls were at home with a babysitter and went to have dinner with Nichol at the Lazy Dog. Now, what he didn't account for was when he opened his wallet, he looks inside and realizes he doesn't have any more gift cards. And he could not muster up the courage, these are his own words, he could not muster up the courage to ask Nichol to pay for dinner. So he pulls out his credit card that is linked to his joint account with his wife, Shanann. And I don't know if Chris maybe didn't know this, but Shanann had notifications set on her phone. So anytime Chris used the card, it would send her a notification to her cell phone letting her know your card was just used at the Lazy Dog for $60. This is how Shanann realizes he is definitely cheating on me. So she starts messaging Chris saying like, what are you doing at this restaurant? And he says, oh, I'm here with some coworkers. And she's like, oh, but the charge was for $60. What did you order? And he says, oh, I just ordered some salmon. Shanann, being the way she is, went and searched for the restaurant menu online. And this is when she finds out the salmon was about $20. And one of his drinks maybe would have been $5. So how did he end up spending so much money if he hadn't paid for somebody else? Now, I don't know what the conversation looked like between them at this point through text message, but as you can imagine, he was probably lying all over the place, telling her, oh, making up who knows how many excuses, but Shanann was not having any of it. Now, before we keep going with what happens after that, when she gets home from her business trip, because she did get home from that business trip that very night, but let's talk about Shanann a little bit before we keep going. And the reason why I want to talk about Shanann first is because there are many people on the internet that believe Shanann is at fault for what Chris did. And based on her behavior and how much she put her life, her kids, and Chris online, people believe that she has histrionic personality disorder. A person with histrionic personality disorder seeks attention, talks dramatically with strong opinions, is easily influenced, has rapidly changing emotions, and thinks relationships are closer than they are. That's way too much. How much do I apply? Okay, disclaimer, I do not know if Shanann had this, if she had histrionic personality disorder. I do not know. And who is anybody to try to psychologically break down somebody who was murdered by their husband? But there are certain things that Shanann did, that she said about herself, that Chris said about her, a little bit like what I just mentioned before. Now, one of the indicatives is that she had an insane amount of friends. She was always talking to her friends, always texting her friends. Like, her friends knew where she put her shoes when she came home. She would update her friends about having cooked dinner and what she was doing. She literally told all of Facebook her business. And that is one of the characteristics that people say indicates that she might have had this. So the way that Shanann interacted online with her following was essentially to try to sell them the MLM. And this allowed her to make large amounts of money in a short amount of time. Now, I don't know if she was making large amounts of money. I don't know. But if she was, why did they have so many financial problems? I think that's something that is a reoccurring theme for them, is that they're always struggling financially, yet Shanann has this great job, or at least to present it as a great job, and it appeared like she was making a lot of money. On the outside, she seemed like a very highly agreeable person, but when she didn't get what she wanted, she would throw tantrums. And this is something that she herself said about herself in some videos. She said that she was pushy and she was a little bit controlling, and that she did it for the benefit of the people around her. According to herself, and some of the videos where she spoke about herself and Chris, she would get really angry if Chris didn't do something she wanted or the way that she wanted. She was even quoted as saying that she likes things done a certain way, and her and Chris know that. And the way she says it in the video, it's just very matter of fact, very nonchalant. She seems so just accepting of the fact that she wears the pants in the relationship, which is exactly what she says in one of her videos. Some of her friends have even said that Shanann would make Chris ask her permission before posting pictures of himself. It's also kind of proven in the fact that she was receiving notifications for his credit card use. So she was either really suspecting that he was cheating on her, or it also blends in with the fact that her personality is just a little bit more controlling. Shanann herself said that she was the dominant one in the relationship, and you can see it evident in her videos where she posts Chris a lot of the time. She's telling him what to do. She's telling him what not to do. She's telling him what to say. You can tell that's just the dynamic of their relationship. But in those videos, you would never think, well, this guy's going to end up harming his wife because she is this way. And also, there exists communication. If you're not happy with the way your husband or wife treats you or controls you, you have a voice. You can talk, and you guys can try to work things out, and you guys can talk things out, which is something that Chris did not and would not do with Shanann. He would never talk about what was wrong. He just denied that anything was wrong. Okay, one of the things that I don't know if this is true or not, and by the look of some of the videos, it seems like Shanann would put the girls in situations where they would have to feel upset, and Shanann would kind of egg that on, them feeling upset. And the theory is that she did this because she wanted people to watch her videos, and she wanted people to think like, oh my God, she's so funny, she's so cool. Look at her not getting fazed by the fact that her daughters are really upset. And this also goes towards the histrionic personality disorder theory, that she had very little sympathy for the girls. Now, I don't know if this is true. From all accounts, from the outside, Shanann looked like a great mother. She looked like a dedicated mother. She was always with the girls. And granted, she was always filming them and putting them on Facebook and social media, which I do not agree with. I wouldn't do that with my children. But it was her choice, and she did it. And Chris later said that it bothered him, but that he wouldn't tell her anything about that because he didn't want to upset her. Because he knew that if he did tell her, by the way, you filming everything all the time upsets me, and it upsets me when you're constantly putting the girls on Facebook, he knew that it would upset her, so he just didn't want to ruffle feathers. But the fact remains that Chris could not stand up to his wife. The night before the murders, Chris takes the girls to a birthday party. I think it was actually a pool party. When he gets home, he messages Shanann saying that he put the girls to bed. He said he tucked them in at about 7:45 p.m. He also texted a coworker at around this time, telling the coworker that it's okay, don't worry, don't show up to the site, to the work site, I'm gonna go. And obviously this was a way for Chris to be able to ensure that he was gonna be there by himself because of what happens later on. After that, he spends 111 minutes speaking on the phone to Nichol Kessinger. 111 minutes. That's a very long phone conversation. And during the phone call, they're having phone sex. That shows you where his mind was. He's not putting his girls to bed and calling his wife to talk about his day and ask her, how's your work trip going? No, none of that. He's on the phone with his mistress, having phone sex for 111 minutes. Months later, Chris admits that he had been planning the murders for weeks at that point. That means that when he put his daughters to bed, that would be the last time he puts them to bed. When he took them to that birthday party, that would be the last time he would take them to a birthday party. All the while knowing he's going to kill his wife, his unborn child, and his 2 daughters. Later that night, Shanann arrives home from her work trip at 1:48 p.m. and she's caught by their camera door coming into the house. You can see her friend dropped her off and she's coming in with her suitcase. Trigger warning, if you do not want to hear what happened and how it went down, skip forward to this time. Chris said that he went into the girls' rooms and he smothered them. He thinks his daughters are dead. So he goes into his bedroom, which he shares with Shanann, and according to him, they have a conversation and he confesses about the affair, and that's when Shanann threatens him and says, you'll never see the girls again. This is when he says that he is totally enraged at her saying that he'll never see the girls again, that he chokes her. And this is when the girls come back in to the room and he realizes, I'm going to have to kill them again. He puts Shanann's body into the car and then he tells the girls to get in the truck. The girls go and grab blankets and some stuffed animals and they get in the car and they're upset. He says that they're sniffling. They know something's wrong with their mom, which is so sad. He drives an hour away to the work site that he told his coworker not to show up to, ensuring that he's going to be there by himself. One of the things that I find very disturbing is that in the moment where the girls are in the car with him and Shanann is dead, the girls are upset. Maybe they might not know exactly what's happening, but they're upset, and he says that in that moment he had no desire to comfort them. He didn't care. He said he didn't feel anything. All he felt was wanting to be with Nichol, and that if he did this, he would just be free, which is so disturbing on so many levels. Now, I'm going to go through what happened with the girls really quickly for my own mental health, and one of the reasons why I never started true crime videos is that for my own mental health, I didn't want to learn about all of this, so I am going to just give you guys a quick recap. I'm not going to get into detail, although the detail is what's out there. So he grabs Cece from the truck and he smothers her. And then he takes her to one of the 2 oil tanks on the site, which if you remember, he told his coworker not to show up, that he's got it. He's going to show up super early so that his coworker doesn't have to show up, ensuring that he's alone. And now we know why. Why would he do that? He then goes back to the truck and he grabs Bella, and Bella says to him, are you going to do the same thing to me that you did to Cece? And he says that he doesn't remember if he answered her question, but he smothers Bella too. And apparently Bella fought back. And the last thing she said was, no, daddy. And he says that those words haunt him to this day. I really wonder if they do. And then he grabs her body and puts her in the oil tank next to Cece's oil tank. Then he grabs Shanann's body, which is wrapped in a blanket, and then he places it out in the field. It seems like he did make an effort to dig a shallow grave, which is where he put Shanann, but she was easily found when the police went and looked for her. So it's not like he was doing a very good job at trying to hide all of this. Okay, I'm going to read to you what Chris said, exactly how he felt after he did it. He said, all he could feel was free to be with Nikki. His love for her was overcoming, and he felt no remorse in killing his family, and he felt justified. Okay, so guess what he does after committing these horrible crimes? What does he do exactly right after? He calls his realtor to discuss selling the house. Did he not think this would look suspicious? I have no idea what he thought. Like, the cops weren't going to put two and two together. They weren't going to find out. They weren't going to look at his call logs. They weren't going to see that he spoke to his realtor about selling the house that he lived in with his wife and kids. It's kind of obvious that Chris was not an incredibly intelligent person if he thought that this was a solid, foolproof plan, that he was not going to get caught. And then he calls Cece and Bella's school to let them know that the girls will never be coming back. Yeah, great way to out yourself. At some point, Chris confessed that he had drugged Shanann in an effort to get her to not be able to fight back. And this is a theory that her family believes, because if she was really just fighting with him about finding out about his affair, then when he started choking her, she would have fought him back. As we know, she's a feisty woman. She is dominating towards him. She is controlling of him. Why wouldn't she fight back if she felt that her life was in danger and that her husband was literally choking the life out of her? So her dad believes that she was definitely asleep. But then he retracted on drugging her. He said that she was alive and that she didn't fight back. So Nicole Atkinson, who is the friend that dropped Shanann off the night before, not to be confused with Nichol Kessinger. Remember, I said that Shanann was very communicative with her friends. Like, she was texting them all the time, and she hadn't heard from Shanann the entire day, which was extremely weird of her. So she got worried and went to the house, couldn't get into the house. There was nobody in the house. Again, this is weird. And she calls Chris. She starts messaging Chris, and she starts saying, like, hey, where are the girls? Where is Shanann? Tell me right now. And this is when Chris is saying, like, stop trying to open the door to the house. And she's like, well, if you know what's good for you, you're going to come here right now and look for your family and open the door and let us in, or we're going to call the cops. So he finally decides to show up to the house, and that's when the police are there. And that's when we get the infamous cam footage from the police. His neighbors tell the police that he's acting strange, that he never shifts his body weight, he's never super talkative. But as the cops were asking him questions, you could clearly see that Chris is nervous. And as Chris turns around, his neighbor's like, something's wrong. You can see this in the documentary, and the documentary is done really well, so I definitely recommend you watch that. Okay, this is when the neighbor says he has footage of Chris in the morning loading the truck. And there's some really scary things that happen here. First of all, Chris is watching that footage with the neighbor and with the police. And Chris said later on in that moment, he thought he was about to get caught putting Shanann's body in the truck and then the girls getting into the truck. It being the last time the girls and Shanann are ever seen again, because after that they were reported missing. The angle of the camera didn't quite catch the back of the truck where he put her body, and it didn't quite see the girls getting into the truck. But something else the camera does catch, which I think is extremely disturbing, and a lot of internet sleuths, TikTok true crime sleuths, a frame of that being the shape of a woman walking into, I'm creeping myself out right now, it's actually scary to me. The shape of a woman is carrying something into the truck. The theory is, of course, that is Nichol Kessinger. Who else would it be? Who else would be helping Chris? But all the while throughout the trial, throughout his interrogation, Chris never, ever gave up Nichol Kessinger. He said she had nothing to do with it. The next day, Chris is interviewed on the local news, and that's again when we get that interview of him saying that he doesn't know where they are and that he doesn't think that they're dead, but that he wants them back. And he's talking to camera I want my family back. You guys got to come back. So not believable, by the way. He's a terrible actor. This infamous interview with the news, afterwards referred to as the sermon by Shanann's friends and family, because he was so righteous during the interview, talking about how he wanted his family back and blah, blah, blah. So the next day after that news interview is when Chris fails his polygraph test, which Detective Lee is the one that ran the test on him. And he failed terribly. He failed really, really bad. And you can see the videos in the documentary, or you can look up the videos of the interrogation and the polygraph on YouTube. You can tell Chris is extremely nervous. Like, you can hear him breathing. He's so nervous. He is just shaking in his boots, literally. And then once he fails the polygraph test, the police just go in on him, because at this point they had already been interrogating him for quite a while, but they'd had it, and they're like, Chris, you got to tell us the truth. What's happened? That's when they tell him that they know about the affair, which he starts denying. He's like, I haven't cheated on my wife. I would never. I haven't cheated on my wife. I don't cheat. Christ, he's such a bad liar. And the police are like, no, you're cheating. You're having an affair. We know that. It sounds like you wanted to get rid of your family so that you could be with your mistress. And he's like, no, I would never do that. Caught, totally caught. But he's just deny, until Detective Lee says, did Shanann do something to the girls? And at first I think he says no, and then he stayed quiet. That's when he asks for his dad. His dad was just outside. They let his dad come in, and that's when he, little by little, word by word, his poor dad is just sitting there on the edge of his seat, like waiting for him to confess like something horrible. And he's like, tell me, what happened? What's going on? And that's when Chris says that Shanann smothered the girls. He is blaming what he did to his daughters. He is blaming his wife for, at this point, to his dad. And that's when his dad just breaks down, and you can see it in his face. He is just devastated at the realize, oh, no, wait, hold on. He tells his dad, she smothered the girls, so I did the same to her. What a horrible situation. He just heard from his son that he killed his wife because his wife killed his daughters. And of course his dad is going to believe him. The detectives come back in and they're like, okay, tell us what happened. But the detectives keep pushing back. They're like, we don't believe that Shanann did anything to the girls. We think you did that and that you're just lying. So he keeps saying the Shanann thing. But then he finally admits that he was the one that murdered the girls. Later, he admitted that he didn't even think of blaming Shanann up until Detective Lee mentioned that. But if she hadn't mentioned, did Shanann do something to the girls, he would have never felt comfortable confessing to killing Shanann. This was like a little gateway for him to be like, oh my God, this is the perfect excuse. This is why I killed her, because she killed the girls. Despicable, absolutely despicable. August 16th, the bodies are found. He finally tells them where the bodies are, and they go and retrieve the bodies. The police officers who had to retrieve the bodies and the coronary people said that they had suffered an insane amount of PTSD from recovering the bodies, because it was just their bodies were in really bad decomposition states because he had put them in crude oil. So the day that the bodies are found, this is when Nichol Kessinger is quoted as saying, I'm going to read this. I legitimately think his cheese was sliding off his cracker long before he met me. In other words, this isn't my fault. He was already cuckoo. His cheese was already sliding off his cracker. I've never heard that before. Elvis, baby, I have a cat visitor. Hola, mi rey angelito lindo de Dios cochichito, bebé, ¿cómo estás? On September 1st, a funeral was held for Shanann, Cece, Bella, and Nichol, which was their unborn son, who they had already named, by the way. Nichol, what a beautiful name. And during the funeral, her dad was quoted as saying, you are nothing but pure love, always caring for everyone. You will always be daddy's little girl. Just what a horrendous thing to have to go through. Okay, something I forgot to mention about Shanann was that she did not get along with Chris's parents. In fact, when she was visiting them in North Carolina during those 5 weeks that they were apart, Chris's mom says she didn't know about Bella's severe nut allergy, and she bought ice cream with a bunch of nuts and all these other things that weren't good for her that she was allergic to. Apparently, Shanann reacted in a way that was accusatory and telling her, like, are you trying to hurt her on purpose? This became a huge fight, so much so that Chris's parents kicked Shanann and the girls out of their house because of the ice cream debacle. Later on, Chris's mom said that she didn't know about the allergy. I mean, what the heck? How would you not know that about your grandchild? I don't know. They always thought that she wasn't good enough for him and that she was controlling. And so that's exactly what happened, the events that led up to the murder and how it all went down. But now we need to talk about another person who a lot of people think was involved, but will never admit to it, and Chris will never admit that she had anything to do with it, which is Nichol Kessinger. During the interrogation, the detectives asked her if she ever said anything to him that would persuade him to killing his family. Did she ever say, hey, that, if your family wasn't around, we could get married, and if you stay with your pregnant wife, I won't be with you, I'm going to break up with you. She denied all of that. I have a full page of shady things that Nichol Kessinger did. The only reason she came forward is because one of the Anadarko managers, after everything went down, after the girls and Shanann and Nico went missing, this manager started going through emails and found the initial emails and proof of the relationship between Nichol and Chris. Someone else at Anadarko overheard that this manager found the emails. So they alerted Nichol Kessinger. So Nichol knew that this manager was sending these emails to the police, which they did. So she quickly ran to the police and was like, hey, I'm the mistress. I'm over here. And I just came out of the goodness of my heart to let you guys know that I've been having an affair with him. And here I am. So that's the only reason why she actually showed up to the police. Not because she wanted to help, but because she knew that she was going to get caught anyway. Seems like you're trying to hide something. She also lied to the police by saying that she did not know Chris was married, even though in their emails, when they first started talking, she said, we shouldn't talk like this. I believe in karma. We should just be friends at work. Another lie. She said she didn't know about the marriage. Of course she did. Of course she knew about the marriage. She had already been searching Chris and Shanann on Facebook months before she even met Chris. So she knew about the marriage. She also lied about having been in the house only once, which they know that she had been in the house more than once. She said she didn't know Shanann's name. If you did a search of Chris, you'd know that he's married to Shanann because it's all over his Facebook and it's all over her Facebook that she's married to him. Okay, another thing is on the day that they were reported missing, that Shanann, Cece, Bella, and Nico were reported missing, she Googled, can cops trace text messages? How long do phone companies keep text messages? Difference between text message content and text message detail. She then deleted her search history after searching all of these things. 6 days later, she searched Amber Fry, who was Scott Peterson's mistress back in 2002. Scott murdered his pregnant wife, Lacey Peterson, and then his mistress came forward, Amber Fry came forward and told the entire world about it. She said she didn't know that he was married. And she was definitely innocent of any wrongdoing. But the fact that Nichol Kessinger is searching Amber Fry and she's searching how much she made on her book deal and her net worth, wow, could you be any more obvious? She also searched, do people hate Amber Fry? At 6:16 a.m. the morning of the murder, her phone pinged near the area of Frederick, which is where Shanann and Chris lived with the baby. Her phone was there. Their house was more than 20 minutes away from where she lived. And at 6 in the morning, she was there. The morning of the murder. After that, she did not use her phone until 2 p.m. And the theory is that by the way, I got this information from a YouTuber, and this girl has an amazing channel. She did wonderful research. She found out through call logs that Nichol Kessinger didn't use her phone till 2 p.m. later that day, apparently because she realized her phone pinged near their house. So she was afraid to use her phone up until 2 p.m. later that day. And guess what she did? She calls her spiritual advisor, who happens to practice sex magic. That is bizarre, wild, and disturbing. At 5:01, she calls Chris twice, but he doesn't answer, and she deletes those calls. He calls her back, and she does not answer. And then she also deletes those calls too. She said she had no idea what was happening at the time, but why are you deleting all these calls if you don't know what's happening? You don't know that his wife and kids have been murdered. You don't know that they're missing, but you're trying to get in contact with him and now you're deleting his calls. She also said that she did not remember what the phone call, the 111-minute phone call, she said she doesn't remember what it was about, even though they were having phone sex the night before the murder. I don't believe that. Okay, so what's the problem with all of this? Yes, there's so much proof. Her phone pinged by the house, but she was never investigated. And the reason why she was never investigated was because Chris confessed. So at the point where Chris confessed, they were like, well, we don't have to investigate her. Chris just confessed. We know he killed him. So what does it matter what her involvement is or that her phone pinged right at the tower near their house. Her father was also in the interrogation room with her and was very aggressive in his way of telling the detectives not to ask her leading questions, which is a perfectly legal thing that investigators can do during an interrogation. Her dad was literally there the whole time saying like, no, don't ask her this. The fact that he was even in the interrogation room is extremely problematic. She had possibly given him 2 motives for killing his family. Number 1, that if she knew Shannon was pregnant, she would never have continued the relationship. And number 2, she told detectives that she would never be with somebody like Shannon who wanted to live outside of their means to make people believe they had more money and that they had a fancy life. And if she was saying these things to Chris, then he was probably eating that up, thinking like, oh my God, she's right. I shouldn't be with Shanann. I shouldn't be with somebody like Shanann who wants to spend money and live outside our means, and I can't afford this and we can't afford that. These are all motives for him to get rid of them, whether she admits to it or not. On the night of the murder, on the call logs between Chris and Kessinger, it is shown that they were calling each other throughout that night, including when a detective called Chris, and according to the call log analysis, Chris had possibly been trying to get Nichol on the call with the investigator, like 3-way calling. But he wasn't able to do it. So he had called the detective on his work phone and then Kessinger on his personal phone so that she could listen in on the phone call. She was literally on the phone with him when he was talking to investigators. Why isn't this something that they want to find out? Why wouldn't they want to know? What are you guys talking about at the same time he's talking to an investigator? I think another really shady thing that she did is while Chris was away with his family, when he went to meet up with them in North Carolina, she was sending him a barrage of naked pictures, videos. She was essentially harassing him with the amount of pictures and videos that she was sending him. She went as far as to say to him, she was messaging people on harmony.com. trying to get him jealous, and it worked because he got really possessive and really jealous, and this is what she wanted because she didn't want him to be with his family. She wanted him to come back for her because why is he with his family? He should be with me. So I'm going to send him a bunch of naked pictures and a bunch of explicit text messages and videos so that he could only think of me, so that he could come back to me. What kind of mentality is that? That is sick and twisted. On August 21st of 2018, Chris was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder, plus 2 additional first-degree charges for the victims being 12 or younger. This was exactly a week after he was on the news pleading to find his wife and his kids. A week later, he is being charged with their murders. It happened pretty quickly. February 18th of 2019, Chris confesses to killing his daughters in a detailed explanation, which I guess up until that point, he was blaming Shanann for that. So around this time is when Shanann's family filed a civil lawsuit, not because they really wanted money, although that would have been fair, but they didn't want Chris to profit off of any of this because he could later on write a book or, you know, documentary, movie, whatever. He could try to benefit financially off of all of this. So in order for him not to, they filed that lawsuit and they did win. The judge said that he had to pay the family $6 million, which they haven't seen a dime and they probably won't. But at least he can't financially benefit off of this crime. I just want to remind you guys, after he killed them, he calls the school to let them know that the girls are never coming back, and he calls his realtor to ask about selling the house, and then calls Nichol Kessinger and they start discussing their future. I hope Shanann, Celeste, Bella, and Nico are resting in peace. And hopefully he'll never get out of prison. And hopefully Nichol Kessinger will be investigated. There are so many people on the internet that are trying to get this to actually happen. And apparently they might be close to it. So I tried to dig around and find out where she is, what she's doing, but I couldn't find anything. I couldn't even find anything in an article. Like, there is no mention of her recently. I did look on Instagram and it seems like she has an Instagram account, but it's private, which is so disturbing to me that she would have an Instagram account. The fact that a person like that is just living and going about her day like nothing is scary. Very, very, very scary. Please subscribe and turn on the notification bell so that you guys can get a notification every single time I post. All right. I love you guys. Bye. A quick shout out to Angel's Beauty Essentials. This is a follower who just started her own eyelash business, and she sent me these beautiful lashes. They're kind of dramatic, but wispy and not super huge. I love them. So thank you, Angels Beauty, for sending me these. You are so appreciated, and I'm going to link your website down below. Bye.